It's really important that you understand the risks of investment, particularly when you are taking income or withdrawals from the investment. Because we've got no way of knowing how investments will perform over time, you'll have heard the saying that we all have to warn you about, which is that investments can go down as well as up, and you might not get back all you invested in certain circumstances. So simple examples can help bring these various risks to life. Once you understand these concepts, you're more likely to understand risk, and hopefully that will help you to come to the right decision regarding investments for you and your family. So for these purposes, we're just going to take a little case study, and we've got a fictional client, let's call him Jack. So Jack has £100,000, and Jack is going to be taking £5,000 out every year, and we're going to assume that Jack's investment grows at 4% per annum after charges. So first thing we're going to look at is longevity risk. So in this graph you can clearly see that if he takes his withdrawals at £5,000 a year, his £100,000 is going to be eroded, and the fund is going to run out shortly after 40 years. And if Jack is still alive, then he'll either have to do without his £5,000 a year, or he'll have to get it from somewhere else. So that's longevity risk. The second risk we're going to look at is called the sequence of return risks. So we often assume that investment markets grow by an amount per annum, often 4% per year. But it doesn't grow linearly. I made that word up. But it doesn't grow in a linear fashion because it fluctuates over time. So you get different returns over different periods of time. So to demonstrate how that works, take a look at this. These are the returns that you might expect and how it was going to affect Jack's £5,000 withdrawals. So if we start in year 1 with a 4% return, and then year 2 6%, year 3 8%, year 4 10%, and then year 5 -8%. If you look at the sequence of return risks here, you can see that they all have different outcomes. So depending on where you start in that circle affects how much money you're going to have and how long it's going to take to run out. So in these different sequences, 2 of the sequences result in Jack having more money after 40 years than the average 4% return. And 3 sequences result in Jack's money running out sooner. So the worst case scenario, which was sequence 5, is that your investment starts with a minus return, and then has fluctuating returns, but Jack will run out a lot sooner if you start off with negative returns. So that's sequence of return risk. So what happens if the investment returns go up and down more violently? In other words, that they're more volatile. So to see how volatility affects Jack's withdrawals, let's take our sequence of returns that we looked at earlier, but make them more volatile. So we're still looking at this over a 5-year period, and it's still an average of 4% a year. But this time in year 1 it's 8%, year 2 14%, year 3 20%, year 4 -14%, and year 5 -8%. And again, we look at the different starting points for those different returns, and then you'll get this impact of volatility graph, which shows you that the different sequences of return in more volatile circumstances has an effect on how long the money is going to last. So in this case, the worst case scenario, sequence 4, is that Jack's money runs out after only 23 years. Oh dear, Jack's got no money. So that's volatility risk. So Jack knows that prices tend to go up, so he might need to take more each year than the £5,000, so that he can still afford to buy the things he's buying with his £5,000. We all know that the price of petrol and beer and bread is more now than it was 10 years ago. So that's inflation risk. So let's assume now that Jack is increasing his withdrawals by 2% a year. And in this graph, we're looking at all four risks at once. You can see that their combined effect is very different to where we started. In the worst case scenario, Jack's £5,000 withdrawals will only last him for 19 years before he runs out. But in the best case scenario, it'll last for 27 years. And both these scenarios are very different to the 40 years of withdrawals that Jack could have looked forward to of his £5,000 withdrawals if we just looked at a linear 4% per annum. So this video has just tried to look at the different risks that you face, not just investment risk, but investment risk in its different forms. So the sequence, we looked at the volatility risk, the sequence of return risk, and the risk of inflation. So all these aspects of risk need to be considered very carefully when you consider an investment, particularly where you're going to be taking withdrawals that you need to maintain for your lifetime. So I hope that's been useful, but if you've got any questions about risk or anything to do with investment, just contact us and we'll be happy to help.